صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين واعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ. كلما ألقي فيها فوج سالهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير. فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير. إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير. وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير. ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير. أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير. أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور. أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشاكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد
زيارة آل ياسين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سلام على آل ياسين. السلام عليك يا داعي الله ورباني آياته. السلام عليك يا باب الله وديان دينه. السلام عليك يا خليفة الله وناصر حقه. السلام عليك يا حجة الله ودليل إرادته. السلام عليك يا تالي كتاب الله وترجمانه. السلام عليك في آناء ليلك وأطراف نهارك. السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضه. السلام عليك يا ميثاق الله الذي أخذه ووكده. السلام عليك يا وعد الله الذي ضمنه. السلام عليك أيها العلم المنصوب والعلم المسبوب والغوث والرحمة واسعة وعدا غير مكذوب. السلام عليك حين تقوم، السلام عليك حين تقعد، السلام عليك حين تقرأ وتبين، السلام عليك حين تصلي وتقنوت، السلام عليك حين تركع وتسجد، السلام عليك حين تهلل وتكبر، السلام عليك حين تحمد وتستغفر، السلام عليك حين تصبح وتمسي، السلام عليك في الليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى، السلام عليك أيها الإمام المأمون، السلام عليك أيها المقدم المأمول، السلام عليك بجوامع السلام. أشهدك يا مولاي أن عليا أني أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله لا حبيب إلا هو وأهله. وأشهدك يا مولاي أن عليا أمير المؤمنين حجته، والحسن حجته، والحسين حجته، وعلي بن الحسين حجته، ومحمد بن علي حجته، وجعفر بن محمد حجته، وموسى بن جعفر حجته، وعلي بن موسى حجته، ومحمد بن علي حجته، وعلي بن محمد حجته، والحسن بن علي حجته. وأشهد أنك حجة الله، أنتم الأول والآخر، وأن رجعتكم حق لا ريب فيها يوم لا ينفع نفسا إيمانها لم تكن آمنت من قبل أو كسبت في إيمانها خيرا، وأن الموت حق، وأن ناكر ونكير حق، وأشهد أن النشر حق، والبعث حق، وأن الصراط حق، والمرصاد حق، والميزان حق، والحشر حق، والحساب حق، والجنة والنار حق، والوعد والوعيد بهما حق. يا مولاي شكي من خالفكم وسعد من أطاعكم، فاشهد على ما أشهدتك عليه، وأنا ولي لك بريء من عدوك، فالحق ما رضيتموه، والباطل ما أسخطتموه، والمعروف ما أمرتم به، والمنكر ما نهيتم عنه، فنفسي مؤمنة بالله وحده لا شريك له، وبرسوله وبأمير المؤمنين، وبكم يا مولاي أولكم وآخركم، ونصرتي معدة لكم، ومودتي خالصة لكم. آمين آمين. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Sisters, and welcome to the Imam Hussein Islamic Center. We send our condolences to Sahib al-Asri wal Zaman on this sad occasion. Just a few announcements before we invite Sheikh Mohammed. Inshallah, this week we are beginning some courses with Sheikh Mohammed Mehdi, Jurisprudence and Fundamentals. It's the same one that we had before. We have course 1 and course 2, and inshallah after Ashura Muharram, we will have course 3. So you can find the details on our socials, or if you're on our email list, the registration form is available. Inshallah, in 2 weeks' time, we are beginning as well Quranic Arabic lessons with Sheikh Mohammed Dehnavi every Wednesday. That will be for beginners and intermediate level. Next Friday, inshallah, we'll be holding the Shahadat of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. So we hope to see you all at 7:30, inshallah, with tafsir coming back next week as well on Thursday evening at 7:30. Without wasting your time anymore, if I can ask that we invite Sheikh Mohammed Mehdi with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم لعن ولا ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله اللهم لعنهم جميعا ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما أصابكم يوم التقى الجمعان فبإذن الله وليعلم المؤمنين وليعلم الذين نافقوا. And what struck you on the day the two armies met was by permission of Allah, that He might make evident the true believers, and they might make evident those who are hypocrites. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. When we discuss Islam, a lot of people make the association, and it's an incorrect association, of the sword and Islam being spread by the sword. And to be honest, nothing can be spread by the sword. If you look at today, how much have you seen Western capitalism or the Eastern communism try and spread their ways by the sword? What have they achieved? If you notice, Western capitalism is only taken by which countries as long as the West occupies them and forces them, and it's not even the same. It's still The only way to keep them under control is by putting dictatorships. And likewise with socialists. When they tried to move communism around, they needed to put a dictator to make sure it all stays in place. Nothing can be moved by the sword, because you cannot compel someone's conscience by putting a knife to their throats. They'll just accept the situation that's put before them. Once that sword is removed, or once that immediate threat has been removed, everything turns to normal. Just like when you look at water, water is a cooling agent. If I apply heat to water, what happens? It burns, it scalds. Remove the heat, what does water become? A cooling agent. So a sword doesn't work. Religion's never spread by the sword. However, I need to be able to fight. I need to have the ability to defend myself, because if I don't, the paradox, in order to have peace, one must prepare for war. If I was mentioning once with the situation where, Sunday, the glorious day of Sunday, April the 14th, when the Zionist entity was struck, the only reason they didn't respond with the same furor that they've been using against the Gazans was because of what they call MAD, mutually assured destruction. As long as I know my enemy can hit back, the good Bruce Lee anecdote, very good but bored not hit back. When you actually hit something that can respond, everything changes. The mawazin, the scales all change. That I know this person can respond. To have that ability, and this is what Islam is about. Islam is not a religion that talks about fighting as the aggressor. In fact, Allah says in the Qur'an, وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Do not aggress. Allah does not love the aggressor. It means do not be the one that initiates a fight. You see Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah many times in his lecture. What does he say? He says we are ready for war, but we do not wish for war. But if you, ya ahlan bil ma'araka, we will fight. But we don't want, naturally, because you've got to be a sociopath to want violence. And you normal human beings don't like violence. Violence is something a human doesn't want. But if it's there, it's there. If it's there, we will engage and we will involve ourselves when we have to. And this is what you need to understand with the battles in Islam. And this is the second battle that we're commemorating. The second battle of Islam in these days is the Battle of Uhud. See, I don't want to go into details of the Battle of Badr, but Badr was one of the most brutal victories for the Muslims that changed everything. When I say brutal, because the mushrikeen were dealt a heavy blow. They lost some of their best fighters. Their champions were killed. And they didn't really need to go to war in Badr. All they needed to do was return what they had taken. You have taken this, return it. You don't need to go to war. But they refused. They said, no, we want to teach you a lesson. We want to come and fight. And they were defeated. But they didn't learn there. They said, we're coming to war again. Now, the hero of the story of Uhud is someone that is known by all Muslims. He's someone that when Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the verse, السابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون. The السابقون are the foremost, the ones that's ahead. السابقون, the ones that are foremost. أولئك المقربون, the ones that are nearest to Allah in proximity. They're near, Allah's put them. Allah mentions about these people. They asked, who are these sabiqun as-sabiqun? The verse came down upon three. It came down upon Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib alayhi salam. all three of them had something in common. They were all people that were known for their prowess in the battlefield and their ability to fight. Another verse that you hear a lot often, رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه, that the men من المؤمنين of the believers, they were men. And I don't want to go, when I say رجال, obviously there's a deeper meaning to it. Rajal is basically, doesn't mean, listen, when you hear the word Rajal, it doesn't mean anyone that's a male. A Rajal is someone that takes a stance, stands on their feet. That's why it doesn't have a mu'annath. There's no female version of Rajal. It's anyone that stands on their feet is a Rajul, that they stood on their feet. That these people took this stance from what they had fulfilled, what? The promise that they made, the pledge that they made with God. From the minhum man qada nahba, of them that they had fulfilled this. Why? Because they were martyred. Who was this? The narration says Hamza and Ja'far. Wa minhum man yantadhir, there's those that still await their martyrdom, and he said that is Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah salam. So these are the positions. وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا, they would not change it in the least. Hamza was the son of Abdul Muttalib. Now, the son of Abdul Manaf. Abdul Muttalib went to find a wife for his son, Abdullah. And the woman that he found, her name was Amina bint Wahab. And Abdullah married Amina bint Wahab, and Abdullah, alayhim as-salam, are the mother and father of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So these are the two that were his parents. While he was there, he said, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as they say. He said, if I'm going to marry my son, I might as well get married as well. So he found the cousin, because Amina bint Wahab, there was Amina bint Wahib, who was the cousin of Amina bint Wahab. So he married her himself. With this, his son Abdullah had Rasulullah Muhammad, and Abdul Muttalib had Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. So Hamza and ibn Abdul Muttalib and Rasulullah were the same age. So they were raised together. They were very close. So they were relatives through their fathers, they were relatives through their mothers, and they were very close friends from beginning of their age. The name that he gave to Hamza was a name that actually means lion. But it's one of the, you hear a lot of them. You hear Sumayda, you hear Layth, you hear all these names that are synonyms of lions, but they're all descriptives of something. Like in Arabic, we don't actually have, even if you say a foreign word, for example, when we use the term for a television in Arabic, they use the word tilfaz, which isn't an Arabic word. It's something that's that has been anglicized, something that's been Arabicized. It's been taken from another language and brought in, and that's why it doesn't have the rulings of the Nahu applicable to it. But there are words that we have that are applicable to our words. For example, when you call, what do we call a steamboat? We call it, any boat you see there, in Arabic they call it bakhira. Bakhira comes from the word bukhar. Bukhar, that it has steam. So a steamboat's called a bakhira. But in Arabic, other things are called bakhira. A locomotive is bakhira. A kettle is a bakhira. Anything that produces steam becomes a bakhira. That's how the Arabic language works. That's how it works, and that's why it's a descriptive. Of the descriptives of lion, Hamza is a descriptive of a lion that grips when they attack. The bite that they have, the grip that they have, they call him Hamza, the lion that has that grip. And Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib was known for his courage. Like, if you look at the narrations, it says that if Hamza in the darkest night was to step on the belly of a lioness in the night and he didn't see it. Like, if sometimes we're walking, someone says boo, and we have a conniption, we stop, we're in the middle of we're about to fall into pieces. Someone scares you with the small, remember someone sends you a video and unless they put up the volume, and you're putting up volume and you're not ready in some car driving in the valley, and then someone's lets out a roar, and you lose 8 of your 9 lives just by watching that video. So it says, the narration says, if Hamza stepped on the belly of a lioness in a dark night and the lioness let out a roar, it said he wouldn't even shudder in the least. This is his courage to that point. Courageous, and it's something you cannot even imagine. His courage and his bravery and his ability. Not only that, he was a sharpshooter with the bow, and his swordsmanship had no match, and he was a lion hunter. So if you look at the lions were widespread, and the lions aren't. If you want to know how widespread lions are, have a look at this. And when we think of lions, we think of the African savannah and every other zoo around the world. But there's still lions present in the Gir forest in India. They're scarce, but they're there. The other thing is, what is the symbol of the English? The 3 lions. There were lions all over Europe. Lions had been spread around the world, even to the point where, and when you read history, for example, in Iran, they used to use what they called hunting leopards. And they weren't actually leopards. They were cheetahs. Cheetahs were used for hunting. Think cheetahs, Africa, what are they doing in Iran? But animals had spread, and because humans came in, took their habitats, and like even if you came to Australia 200 years ago, what would you find? Do you think you found any rats 200 years ago? We didn't have rats in Australia. The English brought them with them. They couldn't live without their rats. The English also, what did they bring into Australia? Foxes. Do you know why they bought foxes? Because the English loved hunting foxes. So they brought the foxes into Australia to chase them. And then they said, hold on, the foxes need some game to chase. So guess what they bought? They bought the rabbits. You ever seen the South Sydney rabbitohs? Why are they called rabbitohs, not rabbits? Because there was so many rabbits at the turn of the 19th century. People used to chase them around Sydney, screaming out rabbitoh, rabbitoh, rabbitoh as the rabbits were running. So they took the title rabbitohs. But these were all imported in the country. We didn't have these. On the contrary, we had things like the thylacine, the Tasmanian Tasmanian tiger, which doesn't exist anymore. We even had some very amazing, like frogs that don't exist, amphibious animals. There's a frog that we used to have that went extinct as well. Amazing because it used to have its gestation would take place in its belly and in its mouth. It would gestate in the belly and then give birth. And that got killed off thanks to the cane toad and whatever they brought in. So all this stuff we used to have in Australia that they changed the fauna here with all the stuff that they brought in. And the West, everywhere around the world where they moved around, you could see all kinds of animals, and these animals, all of a sudden, they disappeared. So at that time, Hamza used to hunt lions and capture these lions and bring them in, and that's what he was known for. And he was the first of the first group that believed in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam after the first 3 years of Islam. During the first 3 years of Islam, there was only 2 people that believed in Rasulullah. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, no one believed in the Prophet except me and Wa bintu Khuwaylid, Khadija alayhi salam. So Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam and Sayyidah Khadija were the only 2 people that believed in Rasulullah in the first 3 years. After that, other people came to Islam. Of them was Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. So what happened is he actually disclosed his belief at one stage, where Abu Jahl passed by the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam at Safa. When you go to Hajj, you have the sa'i between Safa and Marwa. Abu Jahl came near Safa, and you got to imagine it how it was, not how it is now. How the Mecca was. Abu Jahl came past the Prophet, he insulted him, and he hurt him. And then what he did is he got the innards of a sheep, the intestines and all the filth and all that, and he threw them on top of the head of the Prophet, Abu Jahl, And then he threw dirt on the messenger of God, and then he trampled his shoulder with his foot. This is how Abu Jahl was. He was a really Abu Jahl died, just to let you know, he was killed in Badr. Because Abu Jahl hated the Prophet so much, he ran straight to the battle to take part, and he was sent to hell very easily. A messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, as Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Qur'an, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. The messenger of God, someone cuts us off, we want to read their eulogy. The messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, after all this, did not respond. There's a man called Abdullah ibn Jad'an, he heard a maid of his heard and saw all of this, and the messenger of God went to where Quraysh would gather, and he sat with them. As if I remember once there's this Mu'min, someone told me a story about him. He said, I was once in a gathering, and he said he was coming to these people's house, and we were going to a gathering, me and him. As we came closer to the house, the people's house we were going to, they were doing this Mu'min's ghiba. They were speaking about him ill. He said he still knocked on the door, said Salaam alaikum, and sat down as if nothing happened. Some people have that kind of a temperament. Khalas. Let's just sit down and let it go. Let's not make a scene. Some people, they like to spy on people. They want to know what's going on. What have you been up to? One habit I've developed, which is a good habit. Before I get home, I'll call my wife and I say, I'll be home in about half an hour. And then when I get home, I don't just open the door and run in. I'll ring the bell, I'll open, I'll say, Ya Allah. Why? Just in case my wife and kids are doing something that's going to agitate me, so they just stop. Why do you want to come in and sneak into the house and go to World War III? It's not worth it. You go in, just let them pretend that they are a nice, happy, ordinary family. Just rather than turn up and say, why is this person doing this? You see 100 of them running out of your office. God knows what they were playing with or whatever. You just let it go. That's how you got to be, right? Why do you want to look for a war? Make it easier. So the Prophet ﷺ is not someone that would look for problems. In fact, all this happened, he sat down and he was quiet. Now, Hamza, when he returned from hunting lions, his habit, he would come and do tawaf around the Kaaba. When he did the tawaf around the Kaaba, he would not go to his family, his wife, until he had done the tawaf. When he done the tawaf, this servant of Abdullah ibn Jad'an came, this maid, and she told him what took place. So then he said to her, you saw this, what you are saying to me, you witnessed this with your eyes? And it's not hadith, Fulan told me, so-and-so told me. It's like, once when they said the moon was sighted. This is a true story, it's not funny. Sorry, it's not made up, but it's funny. They told me this area in Australia, a city had sighted the moon from this center. So I called the center and I said, someone told me that from this center the moon was sighted. And they go, Hajj Abu Fulan, they called him. They said, who was it? He goes, it wasn't me. I said, then who was it? You could hear him talking in the background. He goes, my friend's neighbor, he's a Sunni. This is what he said. This was his response. He said, my friend's neighbor, he's a Sunni. His cousin saw it. So they were going on this testimony. My friend's neighbor, or my cousins, or something like that. His cousin saw it. It was like, it was connected like something comical. It was like something out of a Monty Python sketch. Are you serious? You are basing this to tell everyone that tomorrow is the Eid based on this testimony. So Hamza said to her, you saw this? You with your eyes, you saw this? She said, yes. So he endured his anger. He entered the mosque. He saw Abu Jahl sitting among the people. He came towards Abu Jahl Hamza, stood above his head with the bow, and he hit him with the bow and made him angry. So Abu Jahl So Abu Jahl went, like, when he got hit, because it's Hamza. This is who Hamza's reputation was. Abu Jahl knew exactly what was going on. So rather than say, why did you hit me? He said, he insulted our forefathers and our gods. This is what he did. That's why I did all that. With his religion. He didn't try and say, why did you, sometimes someone acts and says, what's this for? Why did you hit me? And they know what's going on. They know what the reason is, and they pretend. They're trying to insult your intelligence. Abu Jahl knew Hamza is someone that would have done his research before he turned up. So then at this point, he says, and these are his words, he says to them, تَعْبُدُونَ الْحِجَارَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. You worship rocks other than Allah. And you associate with God by worshipping your idols. He says, أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. So, صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. This center, I honestly, whenever I come here, the crowd, you have to beseech them or implore them to say salawat. Like, seriously, when someone says the name of the Prophet, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yeah, this is something this is free reward. People don't understand. I don't want to segue here, but I have to. Just to let you know, someone says I've committed a sin. The first thing I tell them is Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Honestly. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If people do not understand, I will tell you. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم صل على محمد يا علي من نسي الصلاة عني فقد أخطأ طريق الجنة. Whoever forgets the salah upon me has mistaken the way to paradise. صلوا على محمد وآله. If you just go research the benefits of salawat, I swear you'll stop doing everything else. I'm serious. That's all you do. Sit and do salawat all day. Whenever I get a subh in my hand, I think of istighfar, I think of dhikrullah. The first thing I do is salawat. Because Allah loves Rasulullah. Allah loves Rasulullah so much that in the Qur'an it says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِي. Allah and these angels say salawat upon the Nabi. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. So never be stingy when it comes to this. Always, this is salawat. This is the best dua you can read. People sit there in qunut, you can sit there and say, Rabbana ati, everything. Just say as-salat. Say salawat upon the Prophet in your qunut, that's sufficient. This is the position of the salawat. This is the station of the salawat. So this is where Hamza showed his Islam in front of the mushrikeen. Uhud is significantly, or historically, it's one of the most significant battles. There's over 50 verses in the Qur'an about this battle. And Abu Sufyan, who was the leader of the mushrikeen, this guy was the culprit for Badr. He's the one that set up Badr. That's another discussion. But if you think how these people functioned, Banu Umayyah, when you read Ziyarat Ashura, the Imam says, Allahumma al'an Bani Umayyah qatiba. Completely curse all of Banu Umayyah. These were a bunch of degenerates. When you say degenerates, they were the most decadent people. If you talk about filth and what they were, you could sit here all day just upon researching what they were. What kind of people they were? Enemies of the Prophet. Abu Sufyan did not let anyone weep over the killed in Badr, so the fire could remain for Uhud. You're not allowed. We have this thing called tar. When talb al-thar is vengeance, that when you have tharat, That's why we say Imam Hussein is what? Thar Allah wabna thari. You know? You know when they ask you that quiz question, they tell you why do all the shrines have a flag above them except the shrine of Imam Ali. Imam Ali alayhi salam's shrine is the only one that has no flag. Do you know why they all have flags? Because all of them have not taken revenge for their killings. The only shrine where revenge was taken was for Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Hassan killed the killer of Imam Ali. So we don't have Thar anymore. The killer was killed. But Imam Hussein, the Imams of Baqiyah, when their shrines built, they will have flags. Every single Imam still has a flag because the revengeance for their killing hasn't been taken. So when you say, Ya Thar Allah wa abna Thari, there is this thing called Thar. And people in the tribes, they refuse to do Aza, this is a tribal thing. Up to now, you see, Sunni and Shia tribes. If they're tribal mentality, they won't do Aza. You're not allowed to come and give condolences until they've killed the killer of their killer, son, or their son's killer, or their brother's killer. When they kill the killer, that's when they say, come and give condolences. Until then, this is very tribal and is very, foreign to Islam. So Abu Sufyan didn't let anyone weep or mourn the dead. The fire remained lit from Badr, and because Badr put Islam on the map, pretty much, Quraysh was broken. Quraysh was destroyed. It's like, I love doing a contrast of today. If you take a look at the Harb Tammuz in Lebanon, July War, if you go onto Memory TV, which was Memory TV was made to poke fun at us, but it has a lot of stuff we can use. In it, it's got an interview for Norman Finkelstein from 2008. Okay, if anyone wants this, tell me. I'll send you. I've watched this interview. I'm joking. I've probably watched it about 25 times. So every time I watch it, I love it. It's an amazing interview. What he mentions in it is they ask him, can't we just live in peace with the Zionists? He said to her, no, unfortunately, no. So why? He said, because they will never allow any of their neighbors, if they are not their servants, to exist. You have to be their servant. And because you defeated them, he said they will have another war which will be worse than the first war. There'll be every war. They will continue because they want to break you. See, the whole objective is I want my vengeance. And this is the tharat. That's why things don't end. That's why killings continue. And what happened? Because they never got their vengeance from Badr, when Yazid ibn Muawiyah, the grandson of Abu Sufyan, was involved in the massacre of Karbala, what did he say at the end of this? Only if the my ashyakh of Quraysh were present, of Badr, the ones that were there, were present to this victory, that I've taken vengeance from their defeat. So in other words, Yazid ibn Muawiyah basically let you know that Banu Umayyah, they all had nothing to do with Islam. They were all munafiqs in the whole meaning. And this is what was for everyone to let know. So they were hell-bent on revenge because they also lost to ill-equipped soldiers, and this is like a contrast as well. If you look back when they were losing, if you look at the wars of today, the Muslims, what do they have, honestly? When they defeat, even now, what do they use? If you look at, I have to use what's happening today, but if you looked at where Sayyid Muhammad Marandi was talking about the drones, he said we used $2 million, and this is like a joke. This is like worse than when Huddersfield Town beat Manchester City. And the whole Huddersfield Town team was worth less than one player at Manchester City. And they beat them. So this was humiliation of the nth degree. They used $2 million worth of weaponry. And then the Zionists and their allies used 1.35 billion that's why it's the exact numbers by their admission, in defense to stop $2 million of run down weapon. Imagine when you have, for example, old fireworks and some rundown city wants to have a celebration, you say, yeah, we'll just hand them over. So they just sent them over there. And with $1.35 billion of anti-rocket weaponry they used, and they were not able to stop it. And even they had Abdullah II, try and save as many as he could, in order to please his overlords, and he couldn't do it. And they weren't able. And then they just announced, oh, we stopped 99% of the rockets. And Morandi said, okay, we accept what you said. Just get some independent journalists to film where we said we hit. We'll accept. So they were unable to do that. This is humiliating. This is so humiliating, this loss and this defeat. It makes them hell-bent on doing something far worse. That's why it never ends. Quraysh were at this point. Banu Umayyah were at the point they wanted vengeance. And they wanted it with all they could. And as they say in sport, you're only as good as your last fight. So they needed to save face. They needed to get out there. They didn't want the fight to be an even defeat. They wanted it to be spoken about in history. They wanted to make like Badr look like a qualification lap. This is our first trial, but Uhud, we're going to smash them. It's like, after you've lost by a split decision and you come back and you want to knock out the other person in the first round kind of thing. So what objectives they had, they wanted to kill the big heads in the Islamic world so they can so they can't regather and return. So once I've killed the heads, everyone's finished. If you notice, once again, we go back to this. If you notice in the world today, they always want to kill the Qiyadi. Part of the Geneva Conventions, you can't kill officers. You know what I mean? But Geneva Convention's only applicable to who? To you. Even the United States, when they were fighting the war of independence against the British, they were deliberately targeting British officers. So you want to kill the heads. You want to get rid of the heads, because once I kill the heads, it's a moral victory. You know what I mean? That I was able to kill a head. If I kill this person, and I destroy them. So they said, hold on. So you imagine like Quraysh, they've got their list of terrorists. The number one terrorist they've got on the list is Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's the first terrorist they have on the list. The second terrorist they have on the list is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And the third terrorist that they have on the list is Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib alayhi salam. That's their list of terrorists that they want to kill. Why? Because he killed 3 of their patriots. Walid ibn Utbah, the brother of Hind. Just for a side note, Hind was called Sahibat al-Rayat. Sahibat al-Rayat, just to give you an idea, she was like imagine a red light district. She was the supreme red light district. That's all I'm going to say. People can understand it the way they want. So that's who Hind, the mother of Muawiyah, was. Okay? Her expertise was on another level. Her father was Utbah ibn Rabi'ah. Utbah ibn Rabi'ah. Could you imagine? So her brother was Walid ibn Utbah, her father was Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, and her paternal uncle Shayba ibn Rabi'ah. They were all warriors. And they were all killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Battle of Badr. Some narrations say Shayba was killed by Hamza and Ali together, but Walid and Utbah were both killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Ali, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this was a big thing. If I kill these people, I've killed the heads. I want to get rid of these heads. This is the most important thing. These 3 terrorists have to be get rid of because they killed our champions. They killed our veterans. They killed our patriots. So that's the first thing that they had. The second thing that they had in mind. We said the first thing was they needed to save face. The second reason, they needed to kill the big heads in the Islamic world. And thirdly, they wanted to occupy Medina. Why? Because you've got Mecca, you've got Medina. When you're traveling from Mecca to Medina to Rahlat al-Shita'i wa Sayf, the trade routes between Mecca and Damascus, you have to go past Medina, not through Medina city, but you pass so they can come out and they can stop. So they needed to secure and make a safe route there. Okay, so Quraysh came with 3,000 soldiers, more than 3 times the army in Badr. And Quraysh had several strategies. They brought women, were brought to the battle to give the men morale. Okay, you know, they're there sitting, dancing for them, making it like a party. Even if you look, if you notice, in the Zionists today, what do? They pay all these, my brother, influencers. They call them. My brother calls them influencers, and they are influencers. If you ever notice when they'll get some really attractive woman to wear some to don the garb of an Israeli soldier and say, "Oh, would you like to kill me?" or something like that. And everyone says, "Oh my God, she's with the army." So they boost them around. They show how awesome everything is, and they show you victories, and they don't show you what's really happening. And this boosts them morale, because if everyone actually saw what was happening, and that there was no progress, this war would have been over a long time ago. Because if anyone's read Sun Tzu's Art of War, what's the most important component in a war? Morale. Nothing's more important than morale. You look at morale. If your morale's down, you're finished. How did the Americans lose the Vietnam War? Who remembers? Studied history, if anyone studied history. Vietnam War, the Americans lost the Vietnam from what? They had the Tet Offensive. Remember the Tet Day? So where they had to have a day where there was no war. And then the Tet Offensive, all these random ambushes were done by the Viet Cong. Everyone saw it. That ended them. What made the Americans withdraw from Lebanon? Does anyone remember? What? The 242 or 241, was it? Who remembers? 242 or 241? Coffins draped in the Star-Spangled Banner on their way to Arlington Road to be buried. Ronald Reagan made a decision on that day that no American coffin is ever allowed to be shown on television. That was enough for the American people to say, get out of Lebanon. Pull everyone out. Okay? So firstly, they bring these women to boost the morale, that we can bring our women, and also the war can last for longer. Because we got a family there, we're willing to go all the way. If you notice, how, for example, today, Gaza's under siege. Nothing goes in, whereas the others, even when God bless the Houthis and support them and what they do, they've prevented the shipping routes from. Houthis aren't under the terrorist list yet, so we can say this. Are they? Have they been put down? So when they do, we just have to hide it and say, But yeah, at the moment, they stopped all the shipping routes. But, the good old MBS and all these other mates, they're allowing stuff to still get through to the Zionist regime. So when you have a look at this, you've got supplies. We can keep the war going forever. So they already... See, the thing is, this is a problem. I can give you everything. Let me tell you something. I can give you the best weaponry. I can give you all the money in the world. You can have everything you want in the world. There's one factor you forget. Allah Azza wa Jal. Remember this. Keep this in your mind. When anyone threatens you, when you see all the odds against you, when Musa was sent, I've said this before, when Musa alayhi salam was sent to Fir'aun, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Fir'aun. He has rebelled. He has transgressed. Go. And he says to him, اذهبا. Go, you and your brother Harun. You imagine this. You're 2 men with a staff. That's all you got, a staff. You're going to the most powerful entity at that time. No one can stand to Pharaoh. Pharaoh claimed to be God. That's how powerful he was. So then when God says to him, وَلَا تَخَافَا, he said to Musa and Harun, do not fear. إِنِّي مَعَكُمَا أَسْمَعُ وَأَرَى. I am with both of you. I hear and I see. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, you know what he says about this verse? He says, in fact, what God said to them. He said, Ya Musa, no, that Fir'aun does not, what? Act without my permission. So even while I'm here speaking, bit I want to speak, I need God's permission. Every time I move my hand, I need God's permission. For every moment. And he says he does not breathe without my permission. What we like to call the diaphragm. Allah Azza wa Jal is what makes you function. If Allah is negated in the thought process, big mistake. And this is what the Zionists have done. They've removed God from the equation. They look at all the power that they have. This is what the Western capitalism, which is on the verge of completely collapsing, has done. They've totally negated this. And Quraysh did this on the day of Uhud. They pushed God aside. God's not in the picture. We'll lay siege around Medina until the Muslims fold. This is what we'll do. Eventually they'll fold. Subhanallah, if you look at it, you're seeing history repeat itself. Eventually the Muslims will fold. Won't end up. But here's the problem. Allah mentions in the verse, the beginning, and I'm going to try and round it up very quickly. What he mentions, وَمَا أَصَابَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. So whatever struck you on the day these two armies met, this is in Uhud, is with what? The permission of Allah. Everything that happened. Because Uhud was a Pyrrhic victory. When we say it was a Pyrrhic victory, although the Muslims were victorious, it came at a great loss. You know what I mean? It's like you're playing a football match and you win, but you end up with 3 or 4 injuries, you know, of your star players. So, you know, it was a victory, but, you know, we had a loss. And that's pretty much what happened in Uhud. There was a victory, but it came at a loss. So then he says, فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا. Why? So you might know who are the believers and you might know who are the munafiqs. Who do you mean? All the characters, all the celebrities are in the Battle of Uhud. Every single person. The first one, we said, is the commander of the army of Quraysh, which is Abu Sufyan. Underneath him, his star pupil, the one that's there, is Muawiyah, his son. And the swordsman that they call the unsheathed sword of God. Okay? Khalid Walid. Khalid Walid historically was a coward. And everything you ever hear, he is a coward. Even when people talk greatest warrior, don't even think about him. Yani Walid, Utbah, Shayba, they were all warriors. Amr ibn Wudd al-Amari was a warrior. Okay? Even though they were mushrikeen, the kuffar, the warriors. But Marhab and Harith, the Jews, they were warriors. Khalid was a coward. The first thing you know is Khalid. Let me tell you something. If Khalid was the greatest warrior for Quraysh, you know, I'm going to give you this argument. I'm not going to go too much depth. Listen to this. Walid ibn Utbah was 25 years old, the brother of Hind. When he came to fight, Rasulullah offered him someone to fight him. He said, what are you doing? You know who I am? I'm Walid ibn Utbah. You bring me your best swordsman. That's who I fight. I don't fight just anyone. A warrior wants to fight a warrior. Take a look today. If you look at the sportsmen, the ones that want to fight the best, you know, the ones that sit there and they want the easiest way to get the belt, you know, they're not going to get anywhere. The ones that say, give me the hardest. He's Dagestani, yes, bring him. I'll fight him. Why? Because you know this guy is a warrior. He wants to see how good he is. Walid ibn Utbah, although he was a mushrik, we say the truth. He said, I want the best one. Ali ibn Abi Talib came, he said, I'll fight him. He'll fight him. Khalid ibn al-Walid, where was he? Do you know the first person that came to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib in Uhud was Talha ibn Abi Talha? Talha ibn Abi Talha was a warrior. He had 7 brothers, warriors. They all came one after the other, sent to hell by the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And it wasn't Dhul Fiqar then. So it wasn't the sword that everyone likes to hang around their neck. Back then it was just a sword he fought and sent them. One after the other. Did you know how many standard bearers? Just to give you an idea, what is a standard bearer? Hamar Sahib al-Raya. When we talk about Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, Alam Dar, we say Abu al-Fadl Abbas Sahib al-Raya. Sahib al-Raya is who? Once again, we use a sports thing, he's the franchise player. He's the number one. This is the one you bring to the front. This is the one, the clutch shot, that's who it goes to. This is the one that changes everything. This is the person, when he comes to the Maidan, comes to the fighting field, people run. They know who he is. That when he attacks, people are afraid. This is your standard. They came with all these platoons, all these groups of soldiers. Each soldier had a standard. 9 ashab rayat, 9 people holding a luwa. One after the other went under the sword of Ali ibn Abi Talib. These were the warriors. Where was Khalid ibn al-Walid? Question, where was he? Why wasn't he one of these people? Khalid went the same way as every coward. Where do they go? He went to the back to attack the archers. That wasn't why he went there, because he was a coward. He went to the back because there was an agreement. There was an agreement with them in this battle. And this is where Allah says, so you know who the believers are and you know who the munafiqs are, the hypocrites. There were those that the Prophet said, get on the mount. Whether we are winning, whether we are losing, you do not leave. So what did they do? There was 2 different groups. One would run down and say, we're winning, let's get the booty, whatever we can make. And then the others would scream out that the Prophet has been killed, and they would run. Some of them went all the way to the Red Sea. When you say flee to the Red Sea, just to give you an idea where Uhud was, if you look at the map where Medina was, all the way down, you're going all the way down south of the Hijaz, right to the bottom to get towards the Red Sea, Egypt. It's a long distance. It's several hundred kilometers. So they were running for their lives. They weren't running of fear of the mushrikeen. This is where people are wrong. Why would you be afraid of your friends? They were running in fear of the believers, what the retribution would be for them betraying the Prophet. And that's where the munafiqs were exposed. During this, and we'll get to the end of the discussion, this is Uhud, something you can go for. If I wanted to go into detail with Uhud, we'd be here for ages. Every battle, this is books that go into so much detail on every battle, you'd be shocked in what you read. But during this battle, Hind wanted vengeance for her brother, her father, and her uncle. And she offered Wahshi what she would offer everyone else for free, but Wahshi accepted. So then she said to Wahshi, she said, Barad Ghalili, make this vengeance of this heat within my chest cool. Kill me one of these 3. You know, she said Rasulullah, and we know the hadith says, you know, I'm not using the hadith by word, by verbatim. It's the ma'na, please. So the hadith says, Ashtad al-watis, ihtamayna bi Rasulullah, that basically if the battle became heated, the Muslims said we would run and get protected by Rasulullah. So Rasulullah is not just anyone you can get to. So Wahshi said, I can't get to the Prophet. And then she said to Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, Ali ibn Abi Talib. See, Ali ibn Abi Talib, do you know what the companions used to say? كُنَّا نَنظُرُ إِلَى عَلِيٍّ كَمَا نَنظُرُ إِلَى النُّجُومِ. We used to look at Ali in the battle like we used to look at the stars here. We used to look at him like we look at the stars. Because obviously they were running and he was fighting. So they would see him. You would see where Ali was, where you'd see a whirlwind where the heads would be flying. This is how he used to fight. He said his front in battle was like fighting from the rear. No one could attack him. His right was like his left, and his left was like his right. Ali ibn Abi Talib, if he attacked the Maymana, he attacked the right flank, كانوا يتواصون. The people on the right flank would say, yeah, I told my wife I love her. Bang, he's dead. The next person goes to the left. Same thing. حمل على الميسرة. Same thing. Can يتواصون. Tell my kids to do this. Don't forget his homework. Whatever. Dead. And he'd move from one side to the other. That's how it was. So they couldn't get to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who was left? Who was left? Hamza was, I already told you, if he stepped on the belly of a lioness, he was so courageous, but he was also, because of his courage and bravery, he would rush into everything. There was once a Shaheed, Sheikh Abu Dhar, rahmatullah alayh, big, tall Sheikh, and he was martyred in 2000. If you ever go to Lebanon and ask about him, this guy, whenever he'd be sent for a mission, he was very heavy because he was about 195, 196 centimeters. He was a big guy. And he would always make noise. He was a heavy guy. And they say, Sheikh, why do you come with us? You're too loud. He said, what do you think? We're thieves. We're here to fight. So he'd be like that. We're here to fight. And Hamza would enter the battle like that. I'm here to fight. I'm here to go to war. So then Wahshi said, I can kill him because he will come into this. And this is where Wahshi took advantage and he struck Hamza. When he struck Hamza, obviously, as they killed everyone else, you look at all the heroes that were ever killed, they were always killed by Ghadr. Al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan, who was only a youth, was killed while he was fixing his sandal. Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, they would hide behind the date palms and come out and strike him. Hamza was struck from behind. He hit him with the spear from behind, and when he did, he removed his liver to give it to him. That's why we call it in Ziyarat Ashura, about Muawiyah, we say, وَابْنُ آكِلَةِ الْأَكْبَادِ اللَّعِينُ بْنُ اللَّعِينُ. The son of the liver eater. She used to eat the livers of her enemy. But when she took the liver of Hamza, Allah Azza wa Jal made it so hardened so she couldn't bite it. So she spat it out. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam saw the way Hamza was, he wept and he lamented so much over Hamza. Even Fatima alayhi salam, she made a rosary bead, a tasbih out of the grave, the turba of Hamza alayhi salam. The first tasbih that was made out of turba was made from the turba of Hamza by Sayyidah Zahra alayhi salam. But the hatred towards Hamza didn't finish there. I was actually, last night, I was reading this because, when they say a hadith, I research it and I do all my due diligence and no one can come up and go, where did you get this from? So I was researching the hadith where Muawiyah dug the graves of Shuhada Uhud. Did you know that? 40 years after Uhud, Muawiyah dug the graves. So I was seeing what they say about this because this is a Sunni hadith, not Shia. What do the Sunni ulama say about this? Do they negate it? They don't. They say, yes, Muawiyah was trying to build a waterway. This is what they say. He removed the shuhada. Do you know the narrators, they say the bodies were still fresh. In fact, he severed the finger of Hamza and it began to shed blood. This is 40 years after. Then they buried them. This is how far the hatred went, to the point where he dug them up again. Muawiyah dug the bodies up of Uhud. And then the descendants of Muawiyah, they destroyed the shrine of Hamza. You go there, when you go to Uhud, honestly, you cry. When you look at the state, if you say Sahaba, the Sahaba. Sahaba and their graves are all destroyed. The Shuhada of Uhud. You know how important it is to visit Hamza? We have a hadith. The Messenger of God says, whoever goes to Mecca, to the Kaaba, and does not visit me, my grave, faqad jafani, he has forsaken me. Whoever goes to Kaaba and doesn't visit me. And then he says, whoever comes to visit me and does not visit my uncle Hamza has forsaken me. Would you imagine that? He's equated his visit to the visit of Hamza, Rasulullah. People go to Uhud, they visit Hamza, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, we ask you on this night to grant us the ziyarah of Hamza Sayyid al-Shuhada, inshaAllah, under better conditions when Allah Azza wa Jal has removed this dark cloud that surrounds the Hijaz. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the intercession of Hamza alayhi salam on the Day of Judgment. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant the believers victory over their enemies. Insha'Allah, قريبا عاجلا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, أرواحنا فداه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا جميعا ولقضاء الحوائج وقبول الأعمال وشفاء المرضى وغفران الذنوب وتعجيل الفرج وحسن العاقبة. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.